Spirit, by definition, we cannot perceive. So how do we factor this in, and how do we even correlate the spirit to our spiritual interest or our spiritual realizations with health and well-being? So we found that looking at stress may be a very good entry in that. Because if I think about it, I would say about 80% of our clients, roughly, present with profound symptoms of stress, that manifest to tight shoulders, tight neck, general reports of anxiety, fear, insomnia, digestive problems. And I would say most of them are somewhat stress-related, if not entirely caused by stress. As we know, stress is interfering with the immune system. Stress is interfering with healing. Stress is making us even more accident-prone. Stress is interfering with our digestion. And anything you want to add?
The list goes on and on, really. There's way too much research showing how stress affects our body in negative ways.
Yeah, and so reaching into our experience, our own research into the nature of reality, we find that there is, as long as we believe ourselves to be a separate entity, utterly vulnerable and doomed to die, I want to suggest that we cannot be at ease, at complete ease, ever. And I feel like these existential stressors that come from this background awareness of our impermanence and our vulnerability and our separateness, it acts like a pilot light at our core, basically feeding all the other possible stressors that come up. And so as long as we do believe to be separate and vulnerable and doomed to die, I think there is really no way out. Then we just can try to find band-aids and what did I read this morning? I watched a video on Instagram. It said, like, it was a beaver eating cabbage. It said, like, watching this beaver eating cabbage reduces stress by 17%. So this would be this would be a remedy, but I think we can do better. And so bear with me. The topic is difficult because it deals with non-phenomenal issues, and I was a bit apprehensive to put it all together, but our sound engineer, Sean, thank you very much, he had a suggestion. He said, if I just imagine everybody naked, then I would not be apprehensive. So I'm not going to do it, but I just thought, yeah, I know. So let's look into this, because so if we are separate and vulnerable and doomed to die, then really we don't have any more to talk. But are we really? So, and how are we going to go about it? I think the first thing that in this with this quest would be to look into our sense of identity. I mean, in order to determine if we are all these things, we might want to research what we feel we are. And there is quite a few techniques or approaches that we learned over the years, and I share with many of you. And so what I'm trying to do today, actually, because we have had many individual conversations and many beautiful conversations, and most of them were very much in a time squeeze, because we only had a few minutes sometimes to share what we felt was appropriate, or actually it was pulled out more or less. I don't have an agenda somewhere. It just pulled out in these conversations, coming out of the love we feel for each other and out of this urge to help, to heal. And so the most direct approach to looking into this issue would be what is referred to as self-inquiry in non-dual spiritual approaches. So self-inquiry, very directly, just simply posing the question to ourselves. So what do I mean when I say I? Because every word we know is a label for something. So a lamp is a label for something, so is a floor, a carpet. Every word is a label for either an activity or an object. And so the word I is just another label. In English, it looks like something special because it's just a line. But in all other languages, it's a complete word. So what do I mean when I say I? What does the label stand for? So, and there's nothing particularly mysterious about it. We just go about it as we would go about what is a chair. So when I look into what I am, oh, by the way, I'm thinking of maybe having an hour of sharing what we learned, and then maybe we go into question and answers. So what do I mean when I say I? So I think it can only pertain to what is here right now in my case, you know. So there is a body, and there is thoughts, or usually we refer to it as the mind, like the totality of the thoughts or the stream of thought, and there are emotions. So when I say I, do I refer to this body? Would be a good question. So there's a couple of problems with it, because I call it my body. So that doesn't sound intuitive. If I am the body, why would I call it my body? And also, I cannot replace the words I with the words this body. Like this body wants to know its true nature, his body wanders. I mean, it may work in a few cases, but generally it doesn't work. Also, we are aware of this body in its entirety, so where does that put us? There's a few other reasons. Like, for example, at night when we're dreaming, we have a sense of our body, and now in our daytime awareness, we have a sense of our body, two entirely different things. So I think in this examination, we can put the body aside for the moment. So maybe when we say I, we refer to the mind. But here we have the same problem. It's my mind. Then what is the mind? It's just thoughts. So it's a bunch of thoughts. They're constantly changing. And sometimes they're not even there. At night when we sleep, in deep sleep, there are no thoughts. And so when I say I, am I a bunch of thoughts that's constantly changing, it's coming and going, and they call my mind? No, I'm not. It doesn't make any sense. And emotions, the same thing. My emotions, always changing, coming and going. So this maybe was a 2-minute examination. And by the way, I don't expect, or I mean, I know pretty much all of you, and we had this conversation, so I don't think I'm really confronting you with something revolutionary here. It's just, I think we are all in the same, have the same interest. So in 2 minutes of this short examination, so you would have to do it by yourself, you know, as often as you feel like. I've done it hundreds, if not thousands of times, you know, when I can't sleep at night or whenever I feel like it, because I find it yields something's coming out of it. So at the very least, we could say after this short examination that right now, I don't think I can define myself. And that's enough. So we could just come up with that conclusion, I can't define myself. And let's imagine you do that 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times, and 1,000 times you can't define yourself, the chances are you're undefinable, and that is a big deal. So that's one thing. It's just, I'm going to hop a little bit around because I want to share these nuggets that came out of this conversation. So it's not necessarily a TED Talk, you know, with some overhead and a clear line. And so another thing, which is very compelling, I find, because another reason why we feel in stress and often miserable, because we are convinced that we have so much control over our actions, over our decisions. And if we believe we have so much control over what we do, then we end up constantly second-guessing. Oh, man, I should have done differently, and I hope I'm not going to do this. So this doesn't end. So, but let's look at this. It's a very simple thing, actually. Because every conscious decision we make, every conscious action we engage in, conscious action, Because in unconscious, subconscious action, or intuitive actions, or instinctual actions, we have no control anyway, they just happen. But conscious actions, conscious decisions, they're always preceded by thoughts, by definition. But we have no control over our thoughts. The thoughts just come into our mind. Maybe we think, oh, no, it's not true. Now I'm going to decide what I'm going to have for dinner or for breakfast. See, I'm going to think about breakfast now, so I have control over what I'm thinking. But this thought that now I'm going to decide to think about breakfast, where did that come from? So I just want to encourage you, maybe right now, don't kind of check everything and don't give it to your mind so much. Just let it kind of go through, and if something sticks, then maybe examine it on your own time if you are interested. So this, I find, is very short, very simple, and for me is very compelling. Every conscious action, every conscious decision which we perform is preceded by thoughts, and we have no control over the thoughts. So it kind of follows that we have no control over our decisions and actions. So just pause this also for a moment. So I put it a few things. I don't want to forget some important things. So this, I know how this sounds. What am I going to do? Free will, and the mind is already on red alert, you know. But let's look around. Is it really so revolutionary? Is it really so unbelievable that we may not have any control? Just let's look around on this planet alone. How many living beings? I don't have any idea. I read something about trillions of living beings. So what is going on there? Let's say we see a flock of birds flying from one tree to another tree, or some fish swimming around the bay, a gecko running up the tree, a leaf opening up at the tree, or a flower opening up. And if we would ask ourselves, who is doing that? The answer comes very quickly. Not a problem for us. It's just happening. God is doing it. Life is doing it. Nature is doing it. We have no problem with this just happening. So what about humans? I'd say maybe a few 100,000 years ago, or even a million years ago, humans were just part of it, running around, doing things. Nobody was doing anything. It's just happening. And then what changed? I would do some evolutionary processes. We developed a few extra cells, a prefrontal cortex, few extra cells, few extra connections. And now suddenly we think we are in charge. We have autonomy. We can decide on our whatever, on basis of our mind. This is kind of hilarious. Because if we make a decision, as we know, it affects the entire universe in a way. You know, butterfly effect, and you can follow this too. So is that true? Because we developed a few extra cells, a few extra connections, now suddenly we have control? I don't think so. I think this beautiful prefrontal cortex, what it does, it creates sort of like a mind movie. It creates a narrative, a storyline, subtitles. It creates a story out of the sense perceptions. It's like a processor. And for what reason? For consciousness to experience itself, I would say. For right now, this is a very good thing. Or consciousness, by the way, we are using it synonymous with God, spirit, life, all of it. So I go more into this. For right now, I just wanted to throw in a few maybe things to consider that are all driving this stress response. And let's see what I have there. Well, something comes to mind right now, and especially in the beginning when we started working here 8 years ago, we had a lot of the congregants and ministers, reverends came to see us, and I was intrigued, and very often I felt like talking about God, why not? Experts, like Reverend Tim. So I often ask the question, like, Do you mind we talk about God for a moment there? Okay. And so what I wanted to know is just if you feel God, if you intuit God, if you think of God, do you imagine God to be localized? Meaning somewhere is God, somewhere else is not God. God has form, God has a location, God has a size of sorts. Or God being infinite. Because there's nothing in between, actually. There's no a little bit infinite or something like that. So, and some were thinking quite a bit interestingly, because that would be a question I think that one should ask oneself. So anyway, but everybody, I think probably a few hundred of these conversations, everybody told me, oh no, God is infinite. And I usually say, are you sure? And yes, I'm sure. But you see, if God is infinite, there cannot be anything that is not God. It's very simple. It cannot be God and me, because then God ends at my skin or something like that. So that's another thing that I think it deserves some examination or contemplation. So,
okay, so you said there couldn't be God in anything else.
mm-hmm.
And then I just thought, well, what about all the bad things that are happening? Is that God too?
Well, if God is infinite, then there is nothing but God. I mean, it's just logical. It's just reason. And if there is the perception that God has to be good only, and then the bad cannot be God, then we'd have to talk about this. And we might, right now, I just want to throw in a few things to contemplate. Because I want to make a case that we are not what we are, what we think we are. Because that's the whole story, because we want to get rid of misery, we want to get rid of suffering, we want to get rid of this core existential stress, and it would only work if we are not what most of us think we are. And that's the case I think I want to make, because that is what the conclusion we came, and which I've been talking with many of you on a one-on-one basis. So what I was suggesting is that we are not a body, we are not a mind, we are not emotions, or we are not a combination thereof, not predominantly, but we are actually spirit. We are actually consciousness, which is not too far-fetched, because when I say I see you, then what do I say? I have an image of you in consciousness. So I mean, if it always goes through, what is hearing these words right now? Experientially. I mean, I want to suggest, if you can, to leave beliefs and knowledge systems aside right now, and just with us together, just purely go by your experience. In making these examinations or these contemplations. So, if I say consciousness is at the core, then let's look at it. How can we approach consciousness or spirit or God? How can we approach if it is non-phenomenal, if we cannot perceive it? So let's try by getting a very clear idea of the phenomenal, and maybe this way it gives us an intuition or a feeling about the non-phenomenal. So I think the best is by looking into what we like our paradigm, our current paradigm. It suggests, it believes that our reality is material. I mean, you may not believe this here, but it is our current paradigm. Even the scientific community, to a large extent, says that our reality is material, and consciousness is an emergent phenomenon that comes somehow out of matter, the brain, for that matter. It was a pun. So I'm very interested in this. I have been. I already 30 years ago, I attended the first international conference towards the scientific basis of consciousness. And in 30 years ago, they had all kinds of strange ideas that consciousness comes somewhat out of the quantum phenomena, out of the microtubules in the brain cells. And to this day, they're still searching for the origins of consciousness in the brain. And a large extent, if not the majority of the scientific community. So let's look at it. So it is believed that our universe, our reality is material, meaning stuff, people, planets, galaxies. And consciousness is somehow emerging from that in some stuff. And but let's look at this. They would say that by making matter primary and consciousness secondary, it suggests that matter exists independent, prior, beyond consciousness. But that's a very fancy belief, because it could never be proven. Because for matter to exist, to be perceived, we need consciousness. So I don't know how to pull out of this, for me, absolutely compelling logic. So matter cannot exist independent of consciousness. It doesn't make any sense at all. So, and since we cannot ever claim that something exists outside of consciousness, I would suggest that all there is consciousness. Very simple. Even what we perceive to be as the content of consciousness, it has to be of consciousness, which would suggest if we need a model for reality that we can sort of visualize even, I would say that the reality is something like a hologram of consciousness, infinite, self-generating, and what all we see as objects or ourselves are just like fields in this hologram, expressions in this hologram, like waves are an expression in the ocean, or even like lights and sound systems and fans ultimately are expressions of electricity. So this is already a pretty big deal, no? Let's look a little bit more into, because it's an elusive topic, you know, and even if we intellectually agree for the moment, but then the mind is not very interested in maintaining this kind of perspective. I mean, for many reasons, I would say. First of all, the mind is, I liken it to a computer. It's a very fascinating, brilliant instrument, but it is very limited. Actually, it creates limitations. It only can render things that are defined by space and time. And it cannot do anything with a concept that is outside of space and time, and it cannot do anything with a concept that is not phenomenal. It just can't. So it's not evil, the mind, it just can't. So if we are consciousness in our essence, then, and the mind tries to render it for us, it has to go, it cannot render consciousness, because consciousness being infinite and timeless, and the mind is a little machine creating like, you know, differentiation and objects and everything that is defined by space and time, so it cannot. So it gives us the next best thing, which is this body mind, and that's how this error came about. And speaking of error, it just brings me to actually Genesis, you know, because this topic is absolutely not new, as we know, right? I mean, if from the Bhagavad Gita 5,000 years ago to every spiritual text and perennial philosophy and mythology, it is everywhere, it is tackled, or we're trying to tackle it. So since this is a Christian environment, I would say let's just look at the creation myth of Christian mythology. So Genesis. So I have to say, I think it is vastly misunderstood for the simple reason that it is written in with metaphors and analogies, like all ancient scriptures are, because they were oral traditions, you know, before they were written down. So about very important things, very essential things for the for the human species. So they had to survive the retelling and retelling and retelling. And if it were just words, they would not survive after 5 retellings. It's a whole different story. So they had to create images, pictures, metaphors, analogies to kind of get the message to the ages. And so with this in mind, because today we don't know this so much anymore. Everything is written down. We tend to take things literally. But in this case, this is a very big problem. So Genesis, what does it say? It says Adam and Eve, which obviously there wasn't a couple named Adam and Eve. I mean, who would even have named them? So and they were living in the Garden Eden, which probably wasn't a garden either, it was called Eden. Though what it means that mankind, at some point, it was living in a state of no worry. They were living in paradise. They were living without misery, without problems, like most of animals and plants live still. And then what happened? Well, a snake, by the way, a snake in Christian mythology, for some reason, is a very small percentage of mythologies where the snake is a representation of evil or the devil. Very, very small percentage. In most other cultures and mythologies, the snake is a symbol of wisdom, of nature, of healing, of... we Googled this today, right? Do you mind sharing this? Because this is important, guys. Because, I mean, for whoever is taking their inspiration from Scripture, you know.
Yes, the serpent has been a symbol of female power and fertility since ancient times. It can also represent rebirth, renewal, transformation, immortality, healing, eternity, continual renewal of life. The serpent is also a symbol of evolutionary energy. It appears in the logo of the American Medical Association and other medical organizations, for short.
So I studied some anthropology and I did some deep research there, and I found that the snake was actually a symbol for nature for thousands of years. And in this case, plug it into Genesis, I would say, especially in a Sumerian culture where this whole tradition comes from, I would say the snake was a symbol of evolution in a way. So what happened? Humans lived in a state of no worry, and then evolution made them eat the fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and bad. I mean, that's simple, guys, you know. It just means that we developed our prefrontal cortex, and as a result, we kind of shared what is good for us and what is bad for us. But as we shared what is good for us and bad for us, we also created the subject. And that is symbolized, as far as I remember in Genesis, by the shame, and by people covering themselves and kind of feeling not only separate, but also different. So, and then the whole rest of Scripture basically deals with how can we get out of this, or how can we integrate this new development with maybe Garden of Eden. So how can we integrate this? So I think this I find really important, you know, because as long as we believe that this, I don't know what people even believe, you know, with the snake and the apple and the, I know. Anyways, so I would suggest to give this a chance, that it might be a whole different story. Okay, let's look a bit more at consciousness. Spirit, that which I suggest may just be what we essentially are. I mean, first I would say it's important because I think in my conversation I see a lot of people are inclined to say, yeah, maybe I'm consciousness. Doesn't sound bad. But still we feel like there's my consciousness and your consciousness. You know, because we're still kind of stuck a little bit with this consciousness being in our heads, or it's in your head this consciousness, in my head this consciousness, or your consciousness, my consciousness. But consciousness cannot be put into pieces. It is not spatial. It's not like the concept of differentiation, separateness, yours, mine. It's all concepts that appear in consciousness. Consciousness, by definition, is infinite, and it cannot be put into pieces. So the only possibility is, if we are consciousness, we are all the same consciousness. So if I'm looking at you, Bob, I'm ultimately looking at myself in a different shape and form. And I think this is glorious, you know, because it pertains to everything and everybody. And that is significant. So let me give now for now, because consciousness is a very, and God, Spirit is a very elusive topic, as you may admit. So let me try to do a few analogies to kind of make it more experientially palpable. Because it is not enough, not by a long shot, if we intellectually agree to this. We gotta find it in ourselves in a way. So let me, a few things that came up in our individual conversations that I found compelling and useful. So let's first start, a little example here. I have a few notes here. If I show you this, what do you see, Bob? Okay. Yeah, I know. So I mean, the point I'm trying to make, if you look at the piece of paper with some words on, we see the words. We are looking for the words, we look for what they mean, or if there's a picture on it, we look at the picture, we don't look at the paper. Why would we? There's no information. So normally we just don't take the paper into consideration. Why would we? And let's move on to sound. If you listen to the sound, like my voice, hardly anything else. Maybe some traffic noise, maybe some birds. Let's just make it up. So when you listen to sounds, you listen to the sounds themselves. But do we take the silence into consideration? No, because there's no information. But where would the sounds be without the silence? Every sound comes out of the silence and recedes into the silence. Between the sound, there is silence. And I would even claim that there is silence behind all the sounds. But we are not aware of it. We don't allow ourselves to be aware of it because it doesn't have any information. The mind doesn't have much use for it. Okay, next one, visual. Let's look at the fan or the speakers or each other or anything you want to look at. No problem, we see all the objects. Or what about the space? Do we allow ourselves to be aware of the space without which the objects wouldn't be possible, wouldn't stand out? And now let's put it all together, because consciousness combines all of it, the visual and the auditory and everything. So the same way as we miss the silence, and we miss the space, and we miss the paper, we miss consciousness, because all the content we are aware of in so many ways, but not consciousness. Very simple. But it's there. And at these moments, maybe there is maybe a brief glimpse we allow ourselves. And that's enough, in my experience. A glimpse here, a glimpse there. Maybe it awakens some fascination, some intrigue, and accumulating glimpses until this consciousness, even though you can't really put into words, it acquires a certain sense of, sometimes I say viscosity. It becomes more and more palpable, noticeable to itself. It comes more and more into the foreground because it's always there. It's not that at some point we discover consciousness or something. It's always there. And it's just like the screen at the television screen, and we are just aware of the pixels. We're not really taking note of the screen. Why would we? So it's always there, this consciousness. And just by kind of, tickling it out like this, we have these glimpses, and these glimpses accumulate, and maybe there is even something like a critical mass or something, and it becomes more and more into the foreground, and it pushes the content a little bit more to the side. It doesn't eliminate the content at all, but the priorities change a little bit. So consciousness becomes part of our experience. So there's more. Oh yeah, actually dreaming at night is a very, very good analogy. We all dream at night, approximately an hour and a half, 2 hours, or even more. And I guess we would all agree that in the dream we do not know that we dream in most cases. I mean, there's lucid dreaming, and that's another story. But in most cases, we are just dreaming. Everything is solid, and we are terrified, and we hit our head, and everything is real. But obviously, it's all made of what? Consciousness. So it's not so far-fetched, somehow life has built in all these analogies, we are surrounded by them, and somehow the mind manages to drown it all out, drown it all out, drown it all out. And another one. Oh yeah, now I'm making a little experiment that requires your participation. Okay, let's just try this together and just do your best and just put your expectation or judgment, opinion aside and just do your best to follow me with this. What I want to suggest is we do a little experiment where we try to shut off memory and then just see what happens. Just like a computer, you can pull out the memory chips and it's completely useless then. So let's just see what happens. So I want to suggest just if we pull your earlobe or whatever, let's just pull the earlobe. And when we pull the earlobe, then memory is gone. Short-term memory gone, long-term memory gone. You're all here? But you don't know. Yeah, I did it too. So your perception is unchanged. You can see, you can hear, you can smell. Your perception is unchanged. Your bodily functions are unchanged. The heart rate, the breathing, nothing changes. But you don't know what anything means. There's basically no world here right now. There's just perception and maybe a sense of being alive. But you don't know what anything means. No world. Okay, let's pull again and bring memory back in. Let the flood memory back in and everything is just like before. You know your name, you know where you come from, and you know what everything is, and so on and so forth. So the world is back, full force. Let's do it a few times. Please, let's pull again, and the memory is out, shut off. And just try as best as you can to feel how your experience changes without knowing anything at all. Without there being a world. You're comfortable, I would say. Nothing affecting your metabolism, your biosystem. We now bring the memory back in, it's pulling in, and the memory comes back in, flooding in, the world is back, everything is as it used to be. And then we pull again. And the memory is gone again. And just watch your experience change. Perception is normal, but we don't know anything. We're comfortable, I'd say. Okay, now let's bring, last time we bring memory back in. And now I have a question. As the world went and came back, and went and came back, what about you? Did you come and go? We went and came? So you were here all the time? Okay, well, that's good, no? I mean, experientially, that's saying a lot. Because there was no sense of object, there was no knowledge of body, there was no anything, but we weren't gone. We were still all here. Okay. Well, two analogies I want to share. Just also please try as good as you can to flesh them out. We all been watching cartoons, and we know we sometimes identify with the cartoon character. So let's just imagine we are a bunch of waves, kind of whipped up by a storm in New Zealand, near New Zealand, and here we are kind of like all kind of slowly moving towards Hawaii, South Shore. It takes a while, we get to know each other. Maybe we just kind of, I don't know what waves I do, traveling just alongside for the longest time. We talk, we have faces, cartoon, we have faces, we talk, about how big that ocean is and where we might be going. And so we get acquainted. And then at some point, I think it takes about a week, we see Diamond Head. And we get excited. And we thought, whoa, 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 look at this. And then we see some people who are always early, like Bob. they're already closer to the beach. And at some point, Bob just crashes on the beach. And that gives us pause, right? We go and say, whoa, 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 look what happened to Bob. It's going to happen to us too. And then so maybe, just maybe, that made us kind of think about ourselves. I mean, how can it be? You know, we are here one day, one moment, and suddenly we are gone. And maybe, just maybe, that directs our attention inward. And just be away for a moment and direct your attention inward and see what you find. I would say the ocean, right? I mean, what is a wave other than an expression of the ocean? Even so, you could see it as an individual entity or an individual object, but it is ultimately not separate from the ocean at all. And so here, again, you know, it is not so much about this, how good is this analogy. It's more like, if you do this on your own, are you able to feel it, what the wave discovers as it goes inside and inside and inside and finds nothing but the ocean? Because we have to do these experiential experiments. Otherwise, it all stays an intellectual thing in some drawer, some mental drawer. Another analogy that may help to get a better feel on our true nature is something I already 20 years ago I told this story. I don't know where it came from, but it was the story of two light bulbs. One light, I think it was an attorney's office, right? The two light bulbs were out. They sent somebody to buy two new light bulbs, and the one was put above the water cooler, and the other one was in an archive way in the back, like down the corridor. And the light bulb above the water cooler, it was very entertained, all the gossip and everything, all the action, and it was very distracted, and after about, it was an old one, no LED. It was after about 2,000 hours, that wire cracked, light bulb gone, thrown in trash. That was that. Now the other light bulb, it was bored to pieces in that archive, and sometimes they left it burning all weekend long, and it was really bored, and it started to think about the fate of a light bulb and what it even means to be a light bulb, and it started to become aware of its glass and its shiny glass, and thought maybe I'm just a ball of glass, but it wasn't very compelling. It realized that actually the light was coming from the wire, and so it suddenly felt I'm more like the wire and the glass. But as it kind of kept exploring its nature like this, it realized that what made it shine was clearly the electricity. And that was very intriguing, because electricity was very, again, it didn't have much of a shape or form. It just, it's interesting, electricity, by the way, you know, it's a very good analogy for this. So it was intrigued by electricity, and as it was so, it kind of followed the wires all the way to the walls, looking to the outlets, and was all over the place, turning in the fan. And when these 2,000 hours were up and the wire broke, the light bulb wasn't even home. It was somewhere all over the place, electricity. So I don't know if that helps. I like it. I put a quote here I like a lot in this context. Rumi, I think most of you know Rumi, if not all of you. It's like, I searched for God and I only found myself. And I searched for myself and I only found God. And that was a quote that fitted better earlier, but I still want to share it. It was Meister Eckhart, one of my favorite mystics, spiritual teachers. It was 13th century. By the way, it was Eckhart Tolle. I think you're most familiar with him. He took his name from Meister Eckhart. It is not his birth name. So Meister Eckhart said, to be full of things is to be empty of God, and to be full of God. No.
Yes.
To be full of things is to be empty of God, and to be empty of things is to be full of God. Sorry. So, I mean, I feel I'm making a pretty good case that we are much more likely to be consciousness than this vehicle that consciousness is using to experience itself. So what do we do with this, other than making a mental note? How can we put it into practice? So my fascination lately has been very much with the concept of implementation, because we know things, we hear things, and they sound all very interesting, but how to implement it? Let's assume I made a good case, or you already know these things, and you feel just supported and reaffirming it. Then how are we going to go about it? So what I found is that we are indeed consciousness, and as such, infinite consciousness, and we are all expression of that very same consciousness in very different shapes and forms. Like prisms of consciousness, you could say. Prisms of consciousness, where consciousness refracts itself into itself, experiencing itself, especially with prisms that have perceptual capacity. And so how do we use this? How do we kind of put it into practice? Well, there have been many things in the course of human history and evolution that we were so convinced are true, and that turned out to be not true. Like, for example, for the longest time we thought the Earth is flat. Some people, I understand, they still believe that. But it turned out it's not flat. And, well, it doesn't really affect our daily lives very much that the Earth is round, but if we sit on the beach and we look at this curved horizon, and we just feel literally the ball of the Earth in a way. It's certainly important for navigation, for airplanes. So I think it took a while. I'm pretty sure it took a long time. Like I said, still people who somehow, I'm not sure if they take them seriously, but they're still flat earthers, So it takes time, but what did we have to do whenever we looked around and we thought the Earth is flat? Oh, no, we have to just put our wisdom, plug in our wisdom. Or that we believe for the longest time that the sun is circling around the Earth. Same thing. Again, maybe not affecting our actions on a daily level, but for example, when I think of in my family in Germany right now is maybe night, whatever, and I'm not thinking that the sun is somewhere else or something. I know intuitively that it is the Earth that is turning, and well, there's many such things, or let's just say when we look into the night sky these days, I mean, we see stars, we see planets, we see satellites, but in the old days, we didn't have any idea, all we saw was dots of lights in strange configurations, some moving, some not, and what most of us probably thought they some kind of messages, some meaning, and so we try to draw guidance from them. Maybe we still do sometime, but maybe we don't take it 100% serious, So there's these things, and so this, in the very same way, we are, for the most part, we are taught and convinced that we are individual entities, separate from everything, and that we are just this body-mind, and now we some of us are somehow being pushed into examining that, and we find this is not true. And maybe we are still doubting, and we look again, and we look again, and we look again. And I think there are quite a few approaches that we share tonight. So I think it's really just about implementation. And like say, when I sit on the beach here at Kaimana sometimes, I'm looking around. When there's one way, sometimes we're looking around and maybe some opinions come up like, this person should really go on a diet or something, or my God, what a bathing suit or something like that. I mean, we may just, I'm not saying that we all do that, but if we just sit there and we just apply what we think might be possible, sort of like as an experiment, and look around. What if, indeed, everyone here in this room, what if, indeed, everyone is just a vehicle of consciousness, filled with the same consciousness in a way, like a balloon of consciousness? It's beautiful. I get goosebumps sometimes. It just changes everything. And you know what comes up? Love comes up. Compassion comes up immediately. And all this judgmentalism and things people should be different or should do different, it goes away very quickly. Or even people are not present, like sometimes we have a big problem, if politically or in other ways or culturally, we have a big problem with some beings on this planet, or like evil people, that we perceive to be evil, and we get very agitated. So for me, the benefit of all this inquiry and experimentation is it really helped tremendously. It still comes up sometimes, a reflex, oh my God, but immediately, like within seconds, it comes like a correction coming in. Well, nobody in there, nobody anywhere. It's just the play of consciousness. It's just the play of consciousness. Sometimes maybe I have to check again if there is a strong emotion come up, but it works. It works. It's just the play of consciousness. So other implementation, well, yeah, another good way of thinking about this relationship between us being universal consciousness and at the same time these biomachines here would be to think of an actor and a character on a stage. I think that I find sometimes very helpful. Because you can be a consummate actor, like being completely immersed in a role, like Julius Caesar just ready to get stabbed, or Romeo and Juliet just about to kill themselves. And you can be completely absorbed in that role and play it authentically, but never quite 100% forgetting that you're an actor. And I think this is a pretty good analogy which helps us to bridge this seemingly unbridgeable juxtaposition of learning or feeling like a separate entity and kind of like allowing the possibility that we are infinite consciousness. It's a big step. I recognize that. And lately I thought there may be something in between that I want to offer you or suggest to you to consider. Because I recognize that from coming like a whole lifetime of feeling a person and being busy with being a better person and on all these kind of things, to kind of realizing that I am consciousness at large is just too much sometimes. And but I'm still not quite able then to deny that I cannot find the separate entity. I cannot find the autonomy in me. So how about thinking of ourselves as a conduit of sorts? A conduit. Because I feel, I'm not sure, if it doesn't completely ring true, but it helps. Because to start out as a person and to kind of realize that we are not anything at all is a little much. But to start out as a person but realize I cannot be really somebody, but maybe something like a conduit. I think it's a nice intermediate step, feeling ourselves as a conduit to which consciousness, grace, God manifests. and experiences. Just an idea. And then if we go for that and we feel like that, going to life, just sort of like the prayer of St. Francis, oh Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace, of thy love, along this line. It's beautiful, I mean, we can always try to be a conduit, to be a prism to which the God, the consciousness, spirit manifests, expresses itself. And then if we kind of contemplate that and think, how can we be a better conduit? I think the best way to be the best conduit is just to get out of the way. Because if we are in the middle of the conduit trying to be the traffic policeman of grace kind of manifesting too, that's not going to work very well. So I think this way we have a bit of a stepping stone into self-realization. There you go. I like that. Okay. Yeah. Well, one last thing I thought is good. Sometimes I feel that it resonates with some of you, is because it still sounds kind of, on the first look, it sounds kind of unimaginable that we are not deciding anything. There's nobody inside, and yet we are doing all these complex things. But what about a driverless car? What about a driverless car? Some Tesla or other. Let's make a driverless car with all the AI that we are capable of putting it into. Right now, give him a voice and driving around. You sit in the back seat and you talk with the driverless car. You tell him your life story. The driverless car tell their life story. And now he's going to tell you, I'm going to drive left now. I'm going to decide to drive left now because right there is a traffic jam or something like that. After half an hour in a driverless car, we can't help it giving it a name and feeling it is like an entity. But what it is nothing but a computer, a processor that is immensely programmed, and just it has all the sense organs like cameras and whatever radar, whatnot. It has all the sense perception, auditory, and a processor is programmed with everything we have. And it apparently makes decisions, but only on the basis of its programming. Is it possible that we are just like that? Like biocomputers, like programmed for 4 billion years? For 4 billion years, we've been as living beings on this planet, and every second of our life, we are being programmed. And is it so inconceivable that everything we do now is just a result of this programming? Every action, every reaction we take is just basically that. I don't think so. I think it's entirely possible. So I think we're just about an hour. Very nice. So I think I want to leave it at that. And if there is any question, maybe we can go a little bit deeper into it. I just want to recommend that if some of these things or all of those things they make you more curious, just examine it, because nobody else is going to do it. You cannot believe these things. You cannot read it. It doesn't help if you just read it. You have to look yourself. This I know for sure. You have to look yourself. You have to look if you can find this autonomous entity inside. You have to examine this, if it's really possible that matter can exist outside of consciousness. You got to do it yourself. It's just a few of them, but stick with them. And then very slowly, I mean, sometimes it goes suddenly, but in most cases, very gradually, this conviction about this separateness, it kind of recedes into the background, and a strange feeling of beingness, of existence. It comes more and more into the foreground. And the flavor of this feeling is love, is beauty, is compassion, it's beautiful. So, okay, then you had a question, Reverend Tim.
First of all, I want to thank you, Felix and Carmela, for your commitment and all the ways in which you've contributed to our health and well-being here. Oh, well, who I am we'll get to in a minute, but my role here is I'm Reverend Tim Lytle, Senior Minister of Unity Church of Hawaii here. And so I want to thank you for your friendship, your authenticity, for being such a real spiritual presence here that's touched my life in amazing ways to help bring forth my own consciousness. So thank you. I want to share a short example and then a question. Short example. So my wife and I were on I've been on a couple of extended spiritual pilgrimages to India. Our first one we went together, and we went through this process at a temple where we chanted hundreds of times or whatever, I am existence, consciousness, bliss, Sat Chit Ananda. And it was like bypassing the programming, it was bypassing the idea of who I am. So when you ask, tell them who you are, it's like, well, wait a minute. So, but we did this process and they did this special blessing, and it's supposed to help us to just be in the present moment and bypass the programming. Well, after the process, I didn't feel that different, and we were going outside of the temple, and suddenly I was just a blank slate. You talked about memory. I was a blank slate. Suddenly I had no story to attach anything to. And I was just in awe of the whiteness of the temple. And then, all of these trees. I was just in the moment. And I think, to some degree, that's what you're describing as being pure consciousness, existence, consciousness. And what accompanied that was innate bliss. That I didn't have to earn it. I didn't have to deserve it. It just was integral to my being. So, now here's a question that goes back to early in your talk. So, you would talk to people and ask them, is God infinite or God is localized? Now, my immediate response is both.
Yes, I know. I told you, right? I told you. The Reverend Tim is going to ask exactly that. Yeah.
Both, because for me, I'm relational. And so why wouldn't consciousness, why wouldn't infinity be relational? Also, it is infinite. So here's the question. Try to articulate it. Since we see form, and we are all infinite consciousness, can infinite consciousness not also take form according to our own individual consciousness? In other words, could God appear to us according to the consciousness that we are having at that time?
Well, yeah, I don't see a contradiction. I mean, generally in this whole area of contemplation is we hit a lot of paradoxes or cognitive dissonances, because it's about this integration of the individuality and the infinity. But I want to go back to the ocean and the waves, I would say it's super simplistic, obviously, but I think that pretty much illustrates for me the way I see it. Is the wave a wave, or is the wave the ocean? Of course, it's both. Yes, I mean, consciousness or a dream. I mean, is a dream, or is it also kind of like expressing in all the dream characters? Yeah, it's both. But essentially, I mean, if you would prioritize that, then you would say like the personal expression or the individual expression is made of the absolute in a way. So I would say clearly there is a prioritizing, and I mean, this is the hard part, it's the integration. It's obviously not about just like sublimating and walking around as infinite consciousness. Not at all. As a matter of fact, I think what is very important to realize that all of this, if we are interested in this, we want to kind of deepen into this because we intuit that there is the only way out, like some say, is the way in. If we feel like there is really freedom, there is liberation, it's really in this direction. So if we want to explore this further, no, I lost my thread. Yeah. Well, what I found, because then the mind is like, okay, yeah, cool, what to do? What am I going to do now? And there's the thing is nothing to do. Because doing is always of the mind. So that maybe sound frustrating in a moment, but it's really not about doing. And this is very good. I would put myself on the lazy side more, so I'm not into like unnecessary, exertion and things and doing and doing and doing. So I like this very much about this process of self-realization. There's really nothing to do. I mean, yeah, there may benefit if we kind of follow this impulse. Okay, good. We got to look into these things, but there's not much to do. It's more about undoing and letting go and being open and instead of doing, because doing is just the mind sneaking in and making a mess of things. So I like this very much. So, but it still doesn't mean like, okay, good, nothing to do, so I can forget what I heard and we go. No, it's not like that. I think it's just letting it all stream through and somehow trusting that it does its thing. It works, just trusting it does its thing, but letting it come through. This is very important because I think we all have been in this, we've been I did the total of 12 retreats, from the shortest 1 week and the longest 3 weeks, and half of them silent. So I went very compulsive about getting to the bottom of these things. And many, many, many times I torture myself in doing things and meditating until the blood came out of my ears, So this, I think, it could very well be a waste of time. And I want to recommend not to go this direction. Just be open, be open, be open, be open. Just if you feel like this is something, even just voicing this intent, that I want to get to the bottom of this truth, whatever it costs, I want to come to truth. I want to come to truth. Is enough. If we then switch to reception, and I don't know, some of you may know, I wrote a book like 14 years ago, something about, it's called The Art of Navigation. Because it's a passion of mine. Navigating, meaning just going with the flow, my listening to omens and synchronicities and hunches and intuition. This is, I think, a very good approach in this. But first there has to be like this interest or something. And even this interest we can't really bring about because nobody inside, remember? But the fact that you guys are here, I would assume there is at least some basic interest. And I know most of you, if not all of you. So I know there is this interest. So I think it's good news, if my experience counts for anything, that there's really nothing much to do. Just being open and look and listen. And I mean, it depends. Some of you have more intimate, more nearly personal relationship with consciousness or God. It's fine. There's many different ways to go about this. So you can talk, like, help me, guide me, and then look and listen. Beautiful, very magical, So please keep that in mind, the possibility. There is not much to do at all. Just being open, and things will happen. A little bit like leaving the light on. Maybe you had a glimpse, like, whoa, it all makes sense. Just leave the light on. Okay, anybody any question? Come on, question.
Hi. So you talked about like accepting ourselves as a conduit or as pure consciousness. And I really liked what you've just said about undoing instead of doing. I've always tried to have a project of undoing, the undoing project for myself. So I appreciate that. My question is there a way to use that in getting healthier? Like you talked at the very, very beginning about stresses in our body and, other health issues.
Well, that's a good question. But I mean, is the underlying motivation of this conversation. And I was approaching it from stress, If this realization, if it helps us to diminish these existential worries, if it diminishes the urge to second guess, to worry about the future because somehow we suspect there may just be nobody in there, with nothing to do, that would automatically diminish the stress in a way. And so by diminishing the stress, you do an awful lot for your health. And there's another element of it. My experience is once you hone in to the truth, like I just call it the truth because meaning the nature of reality as it reveals itself. If we push aside all those beliefs and expectations and opinion, we just look at our pure experience. If you hone into that, quite magically, life becomes much more benevolent. Because I feel that all our suffering, even physical illnesses, and especially psychological suffering, I feel it is somehow part of this evolutionary process to kind of, I feel we are not meant to feel 100% comfortable in these bodies. Because if we would not be motivated to look deeper. So I feel that all these struggles and this stress and even physical illnesses, and it's so interesting from our perspective. Like with 2,300 individual clients we saw over those 8 years, how different everybody is, and how everybody has like a different fingerprint, has a different syndromes, different pathological patterns. It is fascinating, I mean, some similar, there's like so many tennis elbows and shoulder injuries, but it's quite unique, Everybody has their, and one of our spiritual teachers, he always says, everything is tailor-made for your transcendence. I think it's a very good mantra to go by. So in other words, not only if you follow this over time, stress will move away or be caught immediately and kind of transcended. And that in turn is making your body so much healthier. Like I said, because it interferes with all kinds of processes. And then the other thing, which even may be more powerful and more magical, that if you 100% committed to, in this case, God, the truth, then life becomes more benevolent. I really feel that. I feel that all along. There's a few, they may be slightly unrelated, but why not? I mean, there's maybe the best kept secret in the human species is the power of gratitude. Incredible. I mean, because the mind is a problem-solving machine. That's how we developed it in a way to solve problems. How to hunt better, I don't know, found better housing spaces and solve this kind of problem. So it's a problem-solving machine. It constantly scans our horizon, our inner and outer horizon for problems. Not because it's evil, it's its job. So, and if all we do is look to the eyes of the mind, all we're going to find is problems. So then we are surprised. It's not evil. We are tasking the mind with problem solving. And then because because we're tasking the mind also with kind of like helping this, or let's say the biomachine. I think the mind is part of this whole biomachine thing. You know, it's the rest of the body. It integrates the mind in its survival kind of like in survival dynamics. So, and of course, in order to help the body to survive, the mind has to first of all help itself to survive, and that's why it is so obnoxiously like hard to push it aside. So these are, I just want to maybe one more time. Life becomes much more benevolent if you are 100% moving into this direction of clarity, or of transcendence, and of truth. And the mind is what it is, you know. And ultimately, the truth is always here. I mean, it's never not here. It's always here in full force. It's just that the mind is so noisy that it just always pulls our attention. That's all there is to it. Just one more time. Just 1 second. Attention is a really good entry point into this topic also. Because attention is something we all understand. Consciousness is more difficult to feel, to understand. Attention is something we are dealing with every day. Our attention is on this, on the voice, on the car noise, whatever. Attention is, it feels like it's going somewhere. You know, it's going somewhere. It's more like actually contracting into something, but it feels like it's going here, it's going there, it's going there. But we never seem to be interested in finding out where does it issue from? What is the source of attention? And this is again something you just have to feel it. There's no answer to that. Except it is the self, it is the heart, it is the soul, it is our true self. So in gratitude, I don't want to forget this, because this I just discovered by chance. Because I think because I have a bad memory, I always forget how beautiful yesterday was in Kapiolani Park or at Kaimana Beach. And so I walked to Kapiolani Park like, wow, you know, every day like, wow, thank you, you know, how beautiful we live here. I can't believe it. I'm wired like this by chance and not to anything I did. And I feel it. The more I express this gratitude, not just silently think it, the more I express it, the more reason for it I get. And this is, I mean, please guys, don't forget this. This is fantastic. And we don't do it because we follow the mind, and the mind is not interested in gratitude. Gratitude is not a problem. So what to do with it? You know? So please, I mean, I would even recommend just fake it sometimes, for starters. But there's always something there, even if it's a good bowel movement or something. There's always something we can be grateful for. So, sorry.
Well, I want to start being grateful. So being grateful that you took the risk to do this, both of you, right? And to just continue to give right to the very, very end, right? Everything that you have and everything in your heart and everything in your soul. This is very aligned with that. So I have deep gratitude. And and I also really appreciate the take on the connection to wellness, right? Particularly like stress and control, right? That combo, and implementation. And one of the ways that it occurs in my own life, I refer to it as like loosening my grip, right? Just like on all of it. Like it's not really all my decision or right or wrong or any of that if I can loosen my grip, right? And also in just like reflecting back to you, my experience of you all, but also what we're all capable of is like reflecting light back to each other and being able to interrupt suffering when we see it in each other, being a catalyst for that, right? Being able to remind each other of our wholeness and of our capacity for belonging. And that is so beautiful. And you both are such reflections of that power. And deeply grateful for all you've given us.
Thank you. Anybody, any question? Hello? No questions. Well, we have a question. I actually wanted to do this at the beginning, but because that's where I had this quote from Meister Eckhart about if we are empty of thoughts, we are full of God, and if we are empty of God, we are full of thoughts. And I always get this wrong, but you get the idea. And all of you know that I'm very passionate about clearing out, nearly every treatment, and thousands of treatments. When I'm hands-on, I always start with, okay, first of all, let's kind of somehow visualize or get an idea of our mental, emotional space, because it's really all there is to it. It's really like there's something here, which we call the mind, which is so noisy and so unstoppable that it simply distracts our attention from our true nature. That's all there is to it. So anytime we can be silent, or any practice that it has its intent to clear out, to let go of whatever it may be, preconceptions, opinions, concepts, ideas, and thoughts, and fears, and just letting go. I always suggest that in the shower is a really good place, every day if we shower, that's where the water is running down. I mean, this is really not much, speaking of not doing anything, because we're already exhaling, right? And I was just suggesting that while we are exhaling, we just let go. We don't even have to think about what to let go. Just let go, whatever there may be floating around, just kind of distracting us from what is really here. So let's just do this, if you don't mind, just 4 breaths together, Just visualize your mental, emotional space somehow and feel, intuit that there's some stuff floating around, some concerns, some memories, some hurt, some whatever it may be. Let's just inhale together and let go of all of this. Let's just exhale, as it exhale, all of it. And just inhale, like pure light, let's say. Just inhale pure light into that entire space. And exhale and let everything go again. Out, 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 everything out, empty. Feel your emptiness just for a moment. And then inhale, pure light. And exhale, pure emptiness. Empty, 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 empty. And full of light and life and love and everything else out. And inhale again. Love and light, grace, peace, and everything out. Just like this. I feel it goes a long ways. All with repetition. Every day. Imagine you do just 1 breath every day. And sometimes maybe you're on a red light, and instead of checking messages or being impatient, we just do an exhalation. Simple stuff like this goes a long ways. It's coming from a scientist. Well, then it's a big deal. I know. I'm happy to hear. Hey. I don't know who wants to